Keep the government out of my business and y'all can keep the change.
He is the free American, Clay Douglas.
We know what we need. We know who to blame.
Catch the Free American Hour, weekdays at 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern.
I'll keep the USA and y'all can keep the change.
For the podcast and more details, visit www.freeamerican.com or catch the podcast by phone by calling 832-999-8621.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another edition of the Free American Hour. I'm your host, Clay Douglas. My guest today was supposed to be Allison Weir, but she is getting ready for a conference here, and well, today, I guess. And but I did want to talk about her work. I want to talk about what's going on here. I'm a little depressed today. My cat died, and because I didn't have enough fucking money to pay a veterinarian to get him looked at while she was sick. And you know who I'm holding responsible? You! The ones watching this right now that haven't bought a book, that haven't made a donation, haven't done shit except sit on your ass and watch the Zionists destroy America. This whole week has been about this. This whole week has been about this. Now, the gentleman I had on yesterday, it's carried a little further. Because for all of you people that are sitting there, for all of you hundreds of people sitting out there, sitting on their ass going, well, I wonder what the show's going to be about today. You're part of the responsibility. What they do is rule by consensus. They rule by propaganda. Warfare by deception is what they do. The conference that Allison Weir is going to is in Washington, D.C. I wish I had the money to go there so I could talk to some fairly intelligent people. They are doing the Occupy AIPAC. And you folks that say, well, Clay, he's a racist. He's an anti-Semite. And that Allison Weir, too. She's been demonized. She's been threatened. Gentleman I just had on my show yesterday talks about gang stalking. Now, it just so happens I was working on a story about that. Because since I ran the story on the CIA drug smuggling, the Mossad drug smuggling, and you know, I've done stories. I've told you where all the fucking ecstasy in the country comes from. That comes from Israel. The rabbis are smuggling it in on them. You know, the Israeli political, AIPAC. AIPAC is a propaganda, is the enforcement arm for the Mossad here. This is the civilian arm of the Mossad here. They want to do everything for Israel, and you send about $8 million a day to a country established by communists, funded by the banksters, a safe country. And you don't want to know. You don't want to know. I'm just a little comfortable in my world right now. I don't want to know. I don't want to be happy. You know what? Carl Kling had a whole song on that, and I'm going to share it with you. I'm going to share it with you for just a moment while I heat up my coffee. I'm a little upset. My friend just yesterday said, you need to change what you do, where you go. You go to the same place every week, don't you? You go to, and they know you're there. They're going to have somebody there waiting, and that's exactly what they did. They had somebody waiting there. A good fat Christian that wanted to tell me I didn't know anything I was talking. I just sat down next to you on the bar. What do you know about what I know? How do you know who I am? I just sat down beside some fat guy with a setting a bag on the stool that I always sit on. Could you move your bag? That's where I sit. Next week, I was kicked out of the bar. Now, my friend's advice yesterday, my guest, John Nutter, yesterday, he says, this is gang stalking. They track me, they watch my show, they see what I'm going to do, they see where I'm going to go next, and they got somebody there to tell everybody how fucked up Clay Douglas is. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see the USA recede diplomatically from every country. And we are funding. We are the new world order. See, this is where they get it right. Well, Clay Douglas, he started the militias. You know, he's a bad guy. Oh, what part of the Second Amendment don't you understand? Yeah, we work for the government. Yeah, I started the militias. Yeah, I started in the governor's office. Now, there's other sheriffs out there, there's other people, and the sheriffs are being demonized too. The same thing's happening to Sheriff Joe Arpaio that happens to me. Arpaio, you know, he puts people in pink shorts. You know, he puts people in tents. They don't even let them have air conditioning up there. Let's see, they didn't have air conditioning 100 years ago. They still had persons, you know. But the problem is the Zionist government, ZOG, Zionist Occupied Government of America, has turned you, at least 40 million of you, into criminals. Now, what I have been talking about for 40 years, I'm still talking about. My friend said I should change do this, go different. You know, part of where I go is economics. They broke me. I don't have a truck. I don't have a car. I don't have this. I don't have that. I got to go, you know, and I can't afford a $4 drink and a couple of $4 drinks at Fridays, so I go to the bar and around the corner and pay $5. Okay, hang on. I've been disconnected. System's trying to reconnect. But it looks like I'm still recording, so I hesitate to do anything. Okay, alright, that's come back, so I didn't lose my recording, I'm still going here. Okay, what I was going to do.
Now we can see a new world coming to view. A world in which there is now we can see a new world coming into view. A world in which there is a very real prospect of a new world order.
The new world order does not mean surrendering our national sovereignty or forfeiting our interests. Blinded by the light. Yes, your eyes are blinded
My scheduled guest today was Allison Weir. She's been on my show several times. And let me share her words with you. She's fighting for this. She's talking about Occupy AIPAC up there right now. AIPAC's having a conference. And all of your so-called politicians are going there to kowtow, to bow down, to kiss their rings, do whatever they do. Now, many people are led to believe that the U.S. support for Israel is driven by American establishment and the U.S. national interest. An analysis that benefits Israel and is particularly promoted by Israel partisans. The facts don't support this theory. The reality is that for decades, U.S. experts opposed Israel and its founding movement. They were simply outmaneuvered and eventually replaced. Like many American policies, the U.S. Middle East policies are driven by a special interest lobby. However, the Israel lobby, as it's called today in the U.S., consists of vastly more than what most people envision by the word lobby. It is considerably more powerful, more pervasive, and consistently more deceptive than any other, even though the movement for Israel has been operating in the U.S. for over 100 years, maybe more than that, from Alexander Hamilton, who worked for the Rothschilds, one of our founding fathers, on down. Most Americans, though, are completely unaware of this movement and its attendant ideology, a measure of its unique power over public knowledge. The success of the movement to achieve its goals, partly due to the hidden nature of much of its activity, has been staggering, and it has been at an almost unimaginable cost. It has led to the massive tragedy in the Middle East, 100-year war of violence and loss, sacred land soaked in sorrow. It has led, what is less widely known is how profoundly damaging this movement has been to the United States itself. It has targeted every sector of American society for manipulation, worked to involve Americans in tragic, unnecessary, and almost catastrophically costly wars, dominated Congress for decades, determined which candidates may be contender for the U.S. presidency, promoted bigotry toward an entire population, religion, and culture, caused Americans to be exposed to escalating risk, and then exaggerated this danger while disguising its cause to foment irrational fears that are enabling the dismemberment of some of our nation's most fundamental freedoms and cherished principles. All this for a nation today that has reached a peak population of a little more than 7 million people, smaller than New Jersey. The Israel lobby is just the tip of an older and far larger iceberg known as political Zionism. This is an international movement that began in the late 1800s with the goal of creating a Jewish state somewhere in the world. In 1897, this movement, led by an European journalist named Theodor Herzl, coalesced the first Zionist World Congress held in Basel, Switzerland, which established the World Zionist Organization, representing approximately 120 groups the first year, 900 the next. While Zionists considered such places as Argentina, Uganda, and even Texas, they eventually settled for Palestine for the location of their proposed Jewish state, even though Palestine was already inhabited by a population that was 95% Muslim and Christian, who owned 99% of the land. As numerous Zionist diary entries, letters, and other documents show, these non-Jews were simply going to be pushed out financially, if possible, by the sword if necessary. Now let me just stop that for just a moment and tell you that I'm aware of this. I've been aware of this for years, since I discovered that that the CIA was bringing the drugs in. Now, this is what this book is about. Since this book has come out, I have been banned from biker bars. I've been kicked out of meetings. I've been kicked out of groups. The Tea Parties have kicked me out of Tea Parties. Don't want me to come there. Don't want me to go there. I've been kicked out of 6 banks. Well, that was actually before the book came out. Since the book came out, I've even gotten kicked out of biker bars that I've been advertising for in some of my magazines for years. This is what my guest called us is gang stalking. And because so many years ago, back in 1994, I said this. And this statement here has been in every one of my magazines for years. This introduction to my magazine. See if I got it here. The Free American remains committed to bringing the truth to the American people. We believe that in a free society, it is the job of the press to be the watchman of the government. It then falls upon the people being fully informed to decide what actions they must take to prevent and defend their liberty. The Free American is unabashedly pro-American. Too many of our ancestors fought and died to protect our Constitution, the oldest in the world, to ensure we would retain those liberties spelled out in the Bill of Rights. Based on the knowledge we've compiled over the last few years of publication, we believe there's a verifiable, well-documented plan to force Americans into global government, complete with one world banking, a global ID system, an international police force, and a disarmed population. This is unacceptable to us personally, incompatible with our Bill of Constitution and Bill of Rights. Those who advocate such a global freedom and a global system and the dismantling of our Bill of Rights are either misguided, uninformed, or totally knowledgeable traitors to this country. We will expose them. The Free American is not affiliated with any political party, religious sect, secret society, cult, club, or movement. We do not advocate violence, but we stress the right of self-defense and the individual's right to bear arms, to be free of intrusive government, to privacy, and the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. I believed that in 1994, and I believe that today. But my magazine is gone. The attacks in the form of reports shifted into high gear. SPLC went after sovereign citizens or anyone who happened to believe that we're supposed to be free and independent. And when I talk about the ADL and the SPLC, I'm not putting down or blaming all Jews for the criminal behavior of a few wealthy families. These are well-funded private propaganda machines designed to eliminate all competition. They are hiding behind the Jews they sacrificed in Russia, Germany, and Poland to drive them to Palestine, a Rothschild colony at the time. There's a detailed timeline in my book. Now, I've told you folks, I need the help and support of all my readers and listeners. Now, last time I told you that, I got help and I got support. Yeah, I got $1 million in. They sent me $1 million. One guy bought into my company with a check for $850,000. I called about it. They said it was good. I deposited, and the next thing I know, my account's closed. The check is bounced. The check is no good, and I owe Chase Manhattan $300 that I didn't have. Get over $1 million in hot checks in, and the FBI said, gee, there's nothing we can do about that, Clay. Nothing we can do about that. That's probably those scammers in Nigeria. Oh, yeah. Why would they send me money when they know I'm not sending them none? To close down 6 bank accounts. That's why. Now, what is happening to the Palestinians, What has happened to the wars going on in Iraq and Afghanistan, where we're the fight, folks? It ain't over oil. It's about the $1 billion of precious minerals up in the mountains, and it's about the billions of dollars of opium poppy that those nasty old Taliban were trying to destroy. Now, Zionism in the U.S. began in the 1880s, but keep in mind, the Rothschilds control the Bank of England, the Rothschilds control the Queen, the Rothschilds control the money. I care not who makes the laws as long as I control the money, said Rothschild. The Rothschild dynasty, they own probably 90% of the wealth in the world. They are the International Monetary Fund. They are the international banks. They do make out money off of every oil deal that goes down, and they set up their own opposition, and they attack anybody that wants to expose Israel is being a criminal state. Now, in 1870, the group organized protest rallies around the country, lobbied Congress to take action against reported Romanian pogroms that had killed thousands of Jews. The chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee suggested that such reports might be exaggerated, but under pressure from Israelite board, the Senate ordered the committee to take up matters with the State Department. Eventually, it turned out that the total killed had been 0. In 1880s, groups advocating the setting up of a Jewish state began popping up around the country. Emma Lazarus, the poet whose words would adorn the Statue of Liberty, promoted Zionism throughout this decade. What was to become the Israeli flag was created in Boston in 1891. Reports from the Zionist World Congress in Basel, which 4 Americans had attended, gave this movement a major stimulus, galvanizing the Zionist activities in almost every American city with a large Jewish population. By the early 1880s, organizations promoting Zionism existed in New York, Chicago, Baltimore, Milwaukee, Boston, Philadelphia, and Cleveland. Between December 1897 and the summer of 1898, numerous Zionist societies were founded in the East and the Midwest. In the 1898, the first annual Conference of American Zionists convened in New York, ironically, 4th of July, where they formed the Federation of American Zionists, FAZ. In 1887, President Grover Cleveland appointed a Jewish ambassador to Turkey, establishing a precedent that every president, both Republican and Democrat, followed for the next 30 years. Jewish historian David G. Ballin reports that presidents recognized the importance of the Turkish embassy for Jewish Americans, especially for the growing number of Zionists within the American Jewish electorate. Since the Jewish homeland of Palestine remained under the direct control of the Turkish government, during this area the ambassadorship to Turkey came to be considered a quasi-Jewish domain. By 1910, and folks, keep in mind, this is how long this has been going on. We're not talking about the New World Order. This is an old world order. They wrote about it in the Protocols of the Zion, but you're not supposed to read that. And if you read that, well, then the person that showed it to you is a anti-Semite. By 1910, the number of Zionists in the U.S. approached 20,000 and included lawyers, professors, businessmen. Even in its infancy, when it was still considered relatively weak, Zionism became a movement in which congressmen, particularly in the eastern cities, began to listen. It continued to expand, and by 1914, several additional Zionist groups had cropped up. The religious Missouri faction was formed in 1903, the Labor Party in 1905, Hadassah, the Women's Zionist Organization in 1912, and that was just the beginning. A Zionist official writing in 1912 proudly proclaimed the zealous and incessant propaganda which is carried on by countless society. The State Department, not depending on votes and campaign donations, and charged with recommending and implementing policy beneficial to America, not to just one tiny sliver of working on behalf of a foreign entity, were less enamored with the Zionists, who felt they were trying to use American government for a project damaging the United States. In memo after memo, U.S. diplomatic and military experts point out that Zionism was counter to both U.S. interests and principles. And of course, you have a Christian Zionist as vice president right now. Secretary of State Philander Knox was perhaps the first in a pattern of State Department officials rejecting Zionist advances. In 1912, when the Zionist Literary Society approached President Taft for an endorsement, Knox turned him down flat, noting that problems of Zionism involve certain matters primarily related to the interests of countries other than our own. While Zionists suffered one small back in 1912, they garnered a far more significant victory in the same year, one that was to have enormous consequences both internationally and in the United States. There was a part of a pattern of influence that continues to today. In 1912, prominent Jewish attorney Louis Brandeis, who was to go on to become a Supreme Court justice, became a Zionist. Within 2 years, he became of the International Zionist Central Office, which had moved to America from Germany a little while before. While Brandeis was an unusually well-known Supreme Court justice, very few Americans are aware of his significant clandestine role in World War I, of his connection to Palestine, of his actions to provide a kernel of factual basis for claims made decades later by anti-war activists called anti-Semitic for suggesting them. Brandeis recruited ambitious young men, often from Harvard, to work on Zionist cause and furthered their careers in the process. Author Pete Groves writes, Brandeis had created an elitist society within the Purushim, a Hebrew word for Pharisees and separate, which grew out of Harvard's Menorah Society. As the Harvard men spread out across the land in their pursuit of professional pursuits, their interest in Zionists were kept alive by secretive exchanges and the trappings of a fraternal order. Each invited initiate underwent a solemn oath, swearing an oath to guard and obey and to keep secret the laws and the labor of the fellowship, its existence and its aims. At the secret initiation ceremony, a new member was told, "You are about to take a step that will bind you to a single cause for all your life. You will for 1 year be subject to an absolute duty whose call you will be impelled to heed at any time, at any place, at any cost, even afterward, until our purpose shall be accomplished. You shall be a fellow of a brotherhood whose bond you will regard as greater than any other year in your life, dearer than that of family, of school, of nation." We must work silently through education and infection, as an early recruiter explained. An organization which has the aims we